Leadership is not an achievement. It's actually not. Hey fam, welcome back to the Legacy Table. I'm your host, Nashasa Kimberly, and I hope you've had a good week. I hope it has been very productive. I hope you have looked into yourself, especially if you're a leader. Here we discuss leadership through mentorship, and we delve into all issues up to and including those ones that people don't really like talking about. So today I'm going to start. It's something very interesting. Are wet dreams a sin or are they normal? If you'd have asked me this question 10 years ago, I would probably have prayed for you because, in my opinion, then they are sinful. And then 3 months ago, I listened to a class. Well, my sister is the one who was attending it, but she was online, and it's just something that really fascinated me. And I remember the lecturer going on and on about how people lack knowledge about this subject, so they consider wet dreams a sin or a curse or something that should just not occur. Let me read something that I came across in my research for this week. Wet dreams are also known as nocturnal emissions or sleep orgasms. They are normal and they are healthy, and they are part of the sexual development of males. They can also occur in females. Basically, it's being aroused in your sleep, but it's because you are maturing from a child to an adult. Now, I did not know this, to be honest. We read about it in grade 6, I think, but I never. It was just a taboo. Like, it's just something that you're not allowed to talk about. Up until I listened to my sister's lecturer, and then I got a deeper understanding on the subject. They are a natural part of sexual maturation, particularly during puberty, and can occur in both males and females. You might be wondering why I'm talking about wet dreams, and this is a podcast on leadership, but this is information that I have gotten in my 20s, my late 20s. Had you told me something like this as a teenager, I would have told you, you are of the devil and you're going home. But I'm grateful because it's a piece of knowledge that I can now apply very, very well, especially when I'm dealing with young people, especially when I'm dealing with young people specifically who are maturing into their adulthood. You'd be surprised by how much this affects adolescents, because then they feel like they are weird. Let me just dispel that notion. You are not weird. Yeah, I figured I would start with an absurd fact that I have learned recently, but that's not what I'm talking about today. Today I'm talking about knowledge and the proper application of knowledge in terms of leadership. You know better, so why don't you do better? A lot of us have a lot of information that is just we just acquire it, be it through social media, be it through class, be it through conversations. We're not all built the same. We have not all been raised the same. We do not come from the same cultural beliefs. And sometimes I feel like if we ignore the knowledge that we acquire through different sources, then we are unable to be very, very impactful. Take the example that I just gave right now. If you were to go within the church setup, or perhaps in Islam, or just in any religious setting, and start talking about that subject, you'd be considered weird. But see, if you don't have that information, then how can you lead young people? Let me draw your attention to another podcast that I was listening to this week. It's one that I absolutely enjoy. It's called Financially Incorrect. It's actually hosted by a young man. And every week I am eager to listen to the things that he's talking about. So this week he had on a lady that was talking about the process of succession. So, for example, if you have a loved one who has passed away, how do you then acquire their assets with the normal procedure? And it's something I personally never ever thought about, perhaps because I'm still young and both my parents are alive. But it's something that came up when my grandma died 4 years ago, because there has to be a certain procedure that you follow, and if you don't apply yourself to understanding the procedures that are there, then you just go through life thinking that it's just easy. And I remember this lady was just pouring out her heart and saying that it's been 5 years since her husband passed away, and up to now she has not yet been able to get the assets that he owned, simply because there are things that she was not aware of. I think the funniest for me was she had to go to her chief. Now, young people, how many of us know our chief? I knew about my chief when I was applying for help. Otherwise, before that, I really had no business. And in all sincere honesty, because of the change from the parliamentary system to the devolution system, it's not something I ever thought about. I just knew that we have done away with the DC, with the chief, with the PC, like all of these people, the elders. I was like, we're just done with them. Shock on me when I was applying for my help and I was being told, young lady, we have to get the signature of the chief, we have to get the signature of a lawyer, we have to, like, it was such a process. But had I not gone through that, then I would not be able to know things. The same way, had I not listened to Financially Incorrect, I probably would not know that when somebody passes away, I cannot just go and acquire their money just like that. So, you know better. Why don't you do better? It can be in any field. For me, this week and 2 months ago, it was to do with sexuality as well as money. I think money has been such a, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just that topic that has been at my fingertips for about 3 years. And I have sought out books, I've sought out information, I've sought out podcasts, I've sought out different TED Talks just to understand. Everybody wants money, but does anybody really know how to get money and have it work for you, or how to get money and have it work for your children's children? Remember, the Bible says that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, not just his children, rather his grandchildren. So for me, I've taken my time to just learn a few things about money. I remember reading a book about gold, the laws of gold. So there are 5 laws of gold. And in all sincere honesty, this is information that has helped me build my wealth, so that in as much as sometimes I can be broke in terms of having cash flow, when it comes to having assets, I'm building them step by step. So my question to you this week is, you know better. Why don't you do better? What do you do with the information that is given to you? I was reading something, should have been yesterday or the day before yesterday, and it said that it's easier to be it's harder to be transformed, but it's very easy to be inspired. Every other day we're listening to people, like for example, you're listening to me, and I'm giving so much information. But at what point do you use that information to transform your life? Are you the kind of person who just enjoys the, wow, oh my God, I didn't know that. Oh my God, thank you for such. Like, do you just stay in that bubble, or do you actually apply the things that you learn? The transformative process, especially of a leader, requires you to sort of become like insects, or is it reptiles? I'm not sure. I don't know if it's yeah, it should be reptiles. you need to shed off a skin. You need to let go of certain behaviors. Why? Because you have knowledge. Right now, knowledge is so easily available. You can go to Google and, well, we advise not to really rely on Google, but Google is, it's a minefield of information. It's different people keying in their thoughts, keying in different facts. You can go on there and acquire knowledge and become a better person. You need to be transformed. Um, when I think about how I used to lead 10 years ago versus how I lead now, these are two very different people. I remember as I was preparing for this podcast, I remember myself 10 years ago, or maybe 11 years ago, in a place where I sat a young girl down. I didn't mean to, I was still young, but I sat a young girl down and I felt that she wasn't respecting me or responding to my type of leadership. And we had some words, and she developed an attitude that I didn't quite like. And so I took my time to sort of stay away because I needed to learn, or rather unlearn, the concept of leadership. See, leadership is not about control. Leadership is not about pumping all of the information that you have into somebody else. Leadership is actually serving somebody and allowing them to watch you walk the talk. So this girl, maybe 6-7 years later, she comes looking for me and she just asks, have you seen so and so? And then she comes and she talks to me in a very calm, in a very demure way, and we have a very good conversation. But I remember as she walked away, I was instantly taken to the time when I was not as nice. I just wanted control. But here we are 6 years later, and she had no problem just having a conversation. She had changed, but so had I. I stopped looking at the idea of leadership as a control mechanism, but rather a transformative one. When I think about the idea of grace, I listen to a lot of podcasts, okay, and I also read a lot. So I was listening to a young man on, I think, Thursday morning or Friday morning, I'm not sure, but I remember him. His story should have been on Thursday. His story is that he came from Syria as a refugee, and when he landed in, should have been Canada if I'm not wrong, when he landed there, life was not as easy. If you know what it means to be a refugee, you know life is not as easy. So he had a conversation with his mom, and his mom told him something that stuck with him. At least that's what he shared. He said, experience is a price that you pay for wisdom. And it is because of some of the experiences that he had, from being a refugee all the way to now being a leader within his youth group. It's because of that experience that he was able to transform, to look at his life not from a victim point of view, but rather from a place where he could empower other people. It's such stories that get me thinking, what do we do with the knowledge that we have? Do we just acquire so much knowledge and get inspired because we want to live in that feel good feeling, that dopamine as it rushes through your brain, or that serotonin as it makes your brain feel like you are on another level, or that adrenaline that rushes through where you're so quick to appreciate somebody rather than being in a reflective posture? I think as I speak today, especially to leaders, we need to be more reflective and intuitive rather than reactive. Many leaders, because of how much they know, really, really want to talk. They bear no burden of responsibility in terms of actually listening to the people that they're leading. They sit down and they want to tell you. But you see, as a leader, you have to take a back seat. Yes, you might be at the front, you might be the one who's piloting the plane to the ends of the earth. But for you to be able to know where you're heading to, you need to have sat down with yourself for just a little while and understood what it means to actually be a pilot, what it means to actually be a captain, what it means to actually be the one who's at the forefront, spearheading for people. In this podcast, I primarily base my talks on mentorship because I believe that we need to bridge the gap between the young and the old. But you see, the older generation, we are so used to criticizing because we have lived so long, because we know so much. But how about we sit down and reflect on how times have changed? We're no longer living in a time when, for example, bus fare is a shilling. We're no longer living in a time when for you to call somebody you have to walk all the way to a phone booth that is thousands of kilometers away. We're no longer living in a time when for you to speak to somebody you have to write a letter. Those are not the times that we're living in. This is a challenge to the older generation, even as we are mentoring the young. We need to understand that we're living in very, very different times. As much as the Word of God says that there is nothing new under the sun, yes, there is nothing new, but the way and the mechanisms in which we are living right now, they're so different from what was there before. I was speaking to a friend of mine, maybe it was at the beginning of the week, and he was just sharing with me how he feels like he's lived literally in three different generations: when he was younger, then in his teenagehood, and then now as he's older, he's looking at young kids that he has seen being born, go to school, and now they're getting done with campus. And he kept telling me, Mel, times are not the same. You know better. So why don't you do better? As leaders in places of authority, we need to understand that there are actions that we need to take in terms of becoming better. We need to allow ourselves to mourn, okay, or to grieve the times that were. We need to allow ourselves to let go of what worked way back then. Like I said, I've been leading for over a decade, and now from where I sit, I realize that how I used to do things, even though there is a formula, how I approach people it's also different from how I was approached. I was thinking of a time when I was not in leadership, and the people who were leading me were very, very cruel because they believed at the time, like many older people would, that tough love is the way. While there is the place for tough love, there's also the place for grace. Because when you look at it deeply, in all sincerity, none of us really deserve some of the things we have. It's just by grace that we are. Leadership is not an achievement. It's actually not. Every time I listen to stories about Nelson Mandela, I realize that leadership is not an achievement. Leadership is perhaps the greatest call to become the least. The disciples sat down with Jesus Christ and they asked him, so who's going to be the greatest? And his answer was simple. The greatest amongst you is the least. Whoever serves, that is the greatest person. So as you go through your week, this is specifically to the older generation. Maybe I'll have somebody else come and address the younger ones. But to the older generation, take a step back. Let go of what worked for you, because it will not work for the young people. The knowledge that you have, allow yourself to sit in wisdom and wise counsel so that you may be able to empower the next generation. Mourn what was and be happy for what is to come. I have been your host, Nachesa Kimberly, and this is the Legacy Table, where we bridge generational gaps in terms of leadership, and we do it through mentorship. Can't wait to see you next week when we discuss other matters. Thank you.